The cold February wind whipped through the narrow streets of Manhattan as Lily adjusted the strap of her bag and hurried across the campus courtyard. Her blonde hair, loosely tied in a messy bun, escaped in strands around her face. The midterms were crushing her. Hours spent buried in textbooks and endless cups of cold coffee had left her a shell of herself. In the library that morning, her two closest friends, Danny and Mia, had staged an intervention. "Lily, you're going to implode," Danny said, leaning back in her chair with a dramatic sigh. Her dark curls bounced as she gestured wildly. "I mean, when was the last time you even slept?" "I sleep!" Lily protested weakly, earning a raised eyebrow from Mia, who slid her phone across the table. 3 a.m. texts about French existentialism don't count," Mia said, her voice even but teasing. "We're kidnapping you tonight. Non-negotiable." Lily groaned but didn't resist. By evening, the three of them were crammed into a corner booth at La Fortuna, an upscale restaurant with dim lighting and an aura of quiet exclusivity. The weight on her chest started to lift as they laughed over overpriced drinks and truffle fries. That's when she felt it. A prickling on the back of her neck. Someone was watching her. "Guys," she whispered, lowering her glass. "Don't look now, but—" Danny, of course, turned immediately, earning an exasperated groan from Lily. Across the room, a man sat alone at a small table, his eyes locked on Lily. He was handsome, striking even, with sharp cheekbones, raven black hair, and a jawline that could cut glass. But it was his intensity that unnerved her. He wasn't just glancing her way, he was studying her. "Okay, who's Mr. Tall, Dark and Intimidating?" Danny muttered. Before Lily could respond, the man's lips curved into a small smile, sending a shiver down her spine. "Let's get out of here," Mia suggested, suddenly uneasy. As they gathered their things, Lily noticed the man rising from his seat, his eyes never leaving hers. The three women stepped into the chilly night, their laughter replaced by tense silence. The sound of their heels against the pavement echoed in the quiet street. Lily glanced over her shoulder, her heart pounding as she caught a glimpse of the man stepping out of La Fortuna behind them. "He's following us," she whispered, clutching Mia's arm. Danny whipped around again, bold as ever. "Okay, no, I'll deal with this." Before Lily could stop her, Danny marched back toward the man, her hands on her hips. "Hey, buddy, got a staring problem or something?" The man halted, his expression cool and unbothered. Up close, he was even more imposing. Broad shoulders, tailored coat, and a subtle air of danger that made Lily's stomach twist. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice smooth but laced with a faint accent Lily couldn't place. "I didn't mean to alarm you. I wasn't following you." His dark eyes flickered to Lily, and for a moment, something unreadable passed between them. "Well, it sure looked like you were," Danny retorted, but Mia gently pulled her back. "Let's just go," Mia urged, her voice uneasy. The man nodded, stepping aside to let them pass. "Have a good night," he said, his gaze lingering on Lily as they walked away. Once they turned the corner, Danny broke the silence. "Okay, creepy but hot, right? Like dangerously hot." "Danny, can you not?" Mia hissed. Lily didn't say a word, her mind was racing. There was something familiar about him, something she couldn't quite place. But before she could dwell on it, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and froze. The screen lit up with an unknown number and a single message. "You shouldn't have left so quickly." Her breath caught. The others noticed her sudden tension. "What is it?" Danny asked. "Nothing," Lily lied, shoving the phone back into her pocket. But as they hailed a cab, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, even after the man was out of sight. And for the rest of the night, his eyes haunted her every thought. Lily barely slept that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the moment over and over. The man's piercing gaze, the text. How had he gotten her number? And why did his face seem so familiar? By morning, she convinced herself it was nothing more than a weird coincidence. Maybe Danny was right. He was just another guy, albeit a disturbingly intense one. But as she walked to her morning lecture, the uneasy feeling followed her, like a shadow she couldn't shake. She slipped into the lecture hall, finding her usual seat near the middle. The room buzzed with students murmuring about assignments and weekend plans. Lily tried to focus on the professor's voice, but her eyes kept drifting to the door. Each time it opened, her heart jumped, half expecting him to walk through. The class dragged on, and by the time it ended, Lily's head was pounding. She packed up quickly, and eager to retreat to the library where she felt safe. But as she stepped into the hallway, she froze. Leaning casually against the far wall was him. Her heart thundered as their eyes locked. He straightened, his movements fluid and deliberate, like a predator stalking its prey. Lily swallowed hard, gripping her bag. "What do you want?" she managed to say, her voice firmer than she felt. He smiled faintly, but there was no humour in it. "Just a moment of your time." She glanced around, but the hallway was nearly empty. Her friends were nowhere in sight. "You've been watching me," she accused, her voice low. "Why?" His expression softened just a fraction, but it was enough to send a confusing mix of fear and intrigue coursing through her. "Because I had to," he said simply. "What does that even mean?" she demanded. "I've been keeping an eye on you," he admitted, stepping closer. "For a long time, Lily. Longer than you realise." Her breath hitched. "Who are you?" He hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "My name is Luca, and I owe you an explanation, but not here. Not now." Before she could respond, he slipped a small card into her hand and disappeared into the crowd. Lily stared at the card in her hand. It was simple, almost nondescript, black with gold embossed letters. Luca Moretti. No title, no contact information, just the name. Her pulse quickened. The name tickled something in the back of her mind, but she couldn't place it. By the time she made it to the library, her thoughts were spinning. She found a secluded corner and pulled out her phone, typing his name into a search engine. The results hit her like a punch to the stomach. Alleged member of the Moretti crime family. Her heart raced as she skimmed the articles. The Morettis were infamous in New York, untouchable, powerful, and deeply connected. Headlines about illegal dealings, extortion, and violence filled the screen, and yet no charges had ever stuck. They were a ghost story whispered in darkened alleys. Lily's chest tightened. Why would someone like him be watching me? Her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. It was Danny. "Where are you? Let's meet for lunch!" "Library." "Can't. Studying." She needed time to think. But just as she slid her phone back into her pocket, her instincts screamed again. That prickling sensation, she was being watched. She looked up sharply and spotted him. Luca. He stood in the shadows near the library entrance, his posture relaxed, as though he had every right to be there. His dark eyes locked onto hers, unwavering. Anger and fear flared inside her. She grabbed her bag and stormed out of the library, heading straight for him. "You have to stop this," she hissed, her voice low but firm. "Following me, showing up everywhere. It's not okay." Luca's gaze didn't waver. "I'm not here to hurt you, Lily. You have to believe that." "Then why?" she demanded, her frustration boiling over. He hesitated, then sighed. "It's complicated, but you're in danger, and whether you like it or not, I'm the only one who can keep you safe." Her eyes widened. "Danger? From what?" His jaw tightened. "From the people who want to use you against me." Her blood ran cold. "What does that mean?" "Let me explain," he said softly, almost pleading. "But not here." Lily stared at Luca, her mind racing. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away, to leave this stranger with his cryptic warnings behind. But his words lingered. "You're in danger!" "I don't have time for this," she muttered, brushing past him and heading toward the subway station. "Lily, wait," he called after her, but she didn't stop. By the time she met Danny and Mia later that evening, her nerves were frayed. They'd convinced her to take a break and go to a new rooftop bar downtown. The place was packed, music thumping and lights casting vibrant hues across the crowd. Lily let herself relax just a little as they ordered drinks and found a table near the edge overlooking the city. "Okay, spill," Danny said, sipping her cocktail. "You've been weird all day. What's going on?" Lily hesitated, unsure how to explain without sounding paranoid. "It's nothing, really. Just this guy I saw. He's acting strange." "Strange how?" Mia pressed, her brow furrowing. Lily opened her mouth to answer, but the words caught in her throat. Her head felt heavy, her vision blurring slightly. She blinked, trying to shake the sudden wave of dizziness. "Lily?" Mia's voice sounded distant. I don't feel right," Lily murmured, clutching the edge of the table for support. Danny frowned. "Did you drink too fast?" "No," Lily whispered. Her stomach churned and her limbs felt like lead. Something was wrong. Mia's face paled. "Lily, did someone—" Before she could finish, a shadow fell over their table. Lily's unfocused eyes caught a familiar figure. Luca. "You need to come with me," he said, his tone low and urgent. "What the hell are you doing here?" Danny snapped, standing to confront him. "She's been spiked," Luca said coldly, ignoring her. He reached for Lily, who was barely staying upright in her seat. "Get away from her!" Mia yelled. "I'm trying to help," he barked, his calm exterior cracking. "If you don't trust me, fine. But she doesn't have time for this." Lily's head slumped against his chest as her world went dark. The world faded in and out, a haze of muffled voices and blurry lights. Lily could barely register her surroundings, but she felt arms around her, steady, strong. Luca. When she came to, her head throbbed, and the first thing she noticed was the hum of a car engine. She was lying across the back seat, a soft jacket tucked under her head. The sharp scent of leather filled her nose. Slowly she turned her head and saw Luca in the driver's seat. His jaw clenched as he weaved through the streets of New York with practiced precision. "Where am I?" she croaked, her voice barely audible. Luca glanced at her in the rearview mirror, relief flickering across his face. "You're safe," he said. "I got you out of there before anything worse happened." Her heart pounded as fragmented memories returned, the bar, the drink, the dizzying sense of helplessness. You were there. How did you know?" "I was following you," he admitted without hesitation. "I told you you're in danger. You're being watched, and it's not just me." Panic surged through her. "What do you mean? Who's watching me?" Luca didn't answer right away. His grip tightened on the steering wheel, the tension radiating from him. "Someone saw me watching you. That makes you a target." "A target," she repeated, her voice trembling. "Why would anyone?" "Because of who I am," he cut in, his voice sharp. "Because they think they can use you to get to me." She pushed herself upright, the world still spinning slightly. "I don't understand. I'm just a college student. What could they possibly want with me?" Luca pulled the car into an empty alley and turned to face her. His dark eyes bore into hers, filled with something she couldn't quite decipher. Guilt, anger, maybe even regret. "You're not just anyone, Lily, and this is bigger than you realize." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope, handing it to her. "Inside is everything you need to know about me, about why this is happening." Her hands shook as she took the envelope. "Why should I trust you?" "Because," he said, his voice soft but firm, "I've been protecting you for 5 years, and I'm not about to stop now." Lily's grip tightened on the envelope, her pulse racing. The air between them felt charged, like a live wire ready to snap. She wanted to open it, but something told her the truth inside would be far worse than her imagination. Before she could decide, a sharp, metallic clang echoed through the alley. Lily's head whipped toward the sound and her breath caught in her throat. A sleek black car had pulled up at the far end, its headlights cutting through the darkness. 2 men stepped out, their movements deliberate, their expressions cold. Luca's entire demeanor changed in an instant. His relaxed confidence was replaced with razor-sharp focus, his hand instinctively reaching into his coat. "Stay down," he ordered, his voice low and commanding. "Who are they?" Lily whispered, panic rising in her chest. "Trouble," Luca said curtly. He pushed her down onto the seat just as the first man reached into his jacket. The unmistakable glint of a gun flashed under the dim light. Bang! The first shot rang out, shattering the side mirror of Luca's car. Lily screamed, her heart hammering as Luca ducked, pulling a gun of his own. "Keep your head down," he barked, firing 2 quick shots through the driver's side window. The men ducked behind their car, shouting orders to one another in rapid Italian. "Luca!" Lily cried, clutching the seat as glass rained down around her. "I said stay down!" He snapped, but his tone softened when he saw her terrified face. "I'll get us out of this. Just trust me." He fired again, the crack of the gun deafening in the confined space. One of the men dropped, clutching his leg, while the other returned fire, bullets slamming into the hood of the car. Luca threw the car into reverse, tires screeching as he floored it. The sudden motion sent Lily tumbling back onto the seat. "Hold on!" he yelled, spinning the wheel as the car fishtailed out of the alley. Lily clung to the seat for dear life, her mind reeling. Whoever these men were, they wanted Luca dead. And now she was caught in the crossfire. The car roared out of the alley, tires screeching as Luca swerved onto the main road. Lily's heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst from her chest. She stole a glance behind them, One of the men had jumped back into their car, now in hot pursuit. The other lay on the ground, clutching his leg, his gun still in hand. "Who the hell are these people?" Lily shouted, her voice shaking with terror. "They work for someone who doesn't like me," Luca replied. His knuckles white as he gripped the wheel. His voice was calm, almost too calm, but the tension in his jaw betrayed him. "I didn't sign up for this," she cried. "You think I wanted this for you?" Luca shot back, his tone sharp. He made a hard right, nearly clipping a streetlight. "I've spent years keeping you out of this world, and now it's all unraveling." Lily stared at him, the words sinking in. "Years? Why? What do I have to do with any of this?" "You wouldn't believe me if I told you," he said, his eyes flicking between her and the rearview mirror. "Try me," she demanded, her fear quickly morphing into anger. Before Luca could answer, the pursuing car smashed into their rear bumper. The jolt sent Lily forward, her seatbelt biting into her chest. Luca cursed under his breath, his foot slamming the gas pedal to the floor. The pursuing car drew closer, its headlights glaring. Luca glanced at Lily. "Open the glove compartment." "What?" "Do it!" he barked. Her hands trembling, Lily fumbled with the latch. Inside was a second handgun, sleek and loaded. She froze, staring at it like it might explode in her hands. "Take it," Luca said, his voice hard but steady. "I don't know how to use this." "You don't have to. Just point it out the window and scare them off." Another hard hit from the pursuing car jolted her into action. She grabbed the gun, her breath coming in shallow gasps. As the car drew alongside them, Luca shouted, "Now, Lily! Do it!" Hands shaking, she rolled down the window, leaned out and aimed. Lily's hands trembled violently as she pointed the gun, her breath catching in her throat. The headlights of the pursuing car blinded her for a moment, and the chaos of the situation made her feel like she might pass out. "Lily, do it!" Luca barked, swerving the car to avoid another collision. Her finger hovered over the trigger, paralyzed by the weight of what she was holding. The men in the other car were shouting something she couldn't hear over the wind and her own heartbeat. She squeezed her eyes shut, then pulled the trigger. The sound was deafening. The recoil jolted her arm back, but the bullet hit its mark. The front tire of the pursuing car exploded, sending sparks flying as the vehicle veered off course. It slammed into a parked van, skidding to a stop. Lily yanked herself back into the car, dropping the gun on the floor as her chest heaved. "Oh my God! Oh my God! You did good!" Luca said, his voice steady but grim. "I could have killed someone!" she yelled, her voice trembling. "They would have killed you without a second thought," Luca snapped, his tone colder now. "You need to wake up, Lily. This isn't some nightmare you can shake off. This is real." She didn't respond, too overwhelmed to process what had just happened. The car sped through the streets, weaving between traffic until Luca finally turned into an underground parking garage. He drove to the farthest corner and killed the engine. For a long moment, there was only silence, save for the sound of their ragged breathing. Luca leaned back, rubbing a hand over his face. "Why are they after me?" Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. "They're not after you," Luca said quietly, turning to look at her. "They're after me. Your leverage. And now that they know I care about you, they'll stop at nothing to get to you." Lily stared at him, her stomach sinking. "Why do you care about me? You don't even know me." Luca's jaw tightened. "You think I've been watching you for 5 just out of curiosity? Lily, there's a reason I've kept you close. And now? There's no going back." Lily's head spun as Luca's words sank in, the weight of everything crashing down on her. She gripped the car door, trying to ground herself. "You've been watching me for 5 years? Why? Why aren't you telling me?" Luca hesitated, his dark eyes locked onto hers. There was a flicker of something there, guilt, regret, maybe even longing. But before he could answer, the faint hum of another car echoed in the underground garage. Luca tensed instantly, his hand instinctively reaching for his gun. "Stay here," he ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Like hell I'm staying here!" Lily hissed, but he was already out of the car, his footsteps echoing in the silence. She peeked out the window and saw 3 black SUVs pulling into the garage, their headlights cutting through the dim light. Men in suits poured out, all sharp lines and cold expressions. They moved with military precision, their weapons visible but not yet drawn. At the centre of the group was an older man, his greying hair slicked back and his presence commanding. He adjusted the cuffs of his tailored suit as he approached Luca. Even from the car, Lily could feel the tension between them. "Luca," the man said, his voice calm but laced with authority. "You've made quite the mess tonight." Luca stood his ground, his hand resting on his gun but not drawing it. "I didn't realize I needed your permission to stay alive, Vincenzo." Vincenzo's lips curled into a thin smile. "This isn't about you, boy. It's about the girl. You've dragged her into our world, and now you've made her a liability." "She's not a liability," Luca growled. "She's under my protection." Vincenzo raised an eyebrow. "Protection? You think that means anything when the families want blood? You've crossed a line, Luca, and now we have to clean it up." Lily's stomach churned as she pushed the door open, ignoring her better judgment. "I'm right here," she said, stepping out. "If you're going to talk about me, maybe include me in the conversation." Vincenzo's sharp eyes landed on her, appraising her like she was a chess piece on his board. "Brave," he mused. "But bravery won't save you. Caramia, not in this game." Lily stood frozen under Vincenzo's piercing gaze. The weight of his presence made the air feel heavy, suffocating. She wanted to be brave, but her knees threatened to give way under the intensity of the moment. Luca stepped forward, placing himself between her and Vincenzo. "She's off limits," he said firmly, his voice edged with steel. Vincenzo tilted his head, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Off limits? Luca, you don't make the rules here. You know how this works. She's leverage now, whether you like it or not." "I'll handle it," Luca said, his tone cold and unwavering. "She has nothing to do with this." "That's where you're wrong," Vincenzo replied, his voice dangerously calm. He motioned to one of the men behind him, who stepped forward, holding a thick folder. Vincenzo plucked it from his hands and tossed it at Luca's feet. "She's been in this far longer than she realizes." Luca bent down to pick up the folder, his jaw clenched. He opened it, flipping through the pages, his expression darkening with each one. Lily's heart pounded as she saw her name and photo among the documents. "What is this?" she demanded, stepping closer despite the threat looming in the room. "It's your life, my dear," Vincenzo said smoothly. "Every detail, every connection, your father, your mother, your little scholarships, your late-night study sessions, even that apartment you thought was anonymous. We've known about it all." Lily's blood ran cold. "Why? Why would you care about me?" "Because your father owed us a debt," Vincenzo said matter-of-factly. "A very large one. When he couldn't pay, he gave us something far more valuable. You." Her world tilted. "That's a lie," she said, her voice trembling. "My father would never, wouldn't he?" Vincenzo interrupted, his smile sharp and cutting. "Think about it. Cara, why do you think Luca has been watching you all these years? He wasn't protecting you out of the kindness of his heart. He was fulfilling an obligation, your father's last wish." Luca's silence spoke volumes, his face dark with emotion. "No," Lily whispered, shaking her head. "This can't be true." But the look on Luca's face told her everything she didn't want to hear. Lily's world shattered as Vincenzo's words echoed in her mind. She stared at Luca, her eyes pleading for him to deny it, to tell her this was all some cruel misunderstanding. But the pain in his expression was undeniable, a silent confession that twisted the knife even deeper. "Lily," Luca began, his voice low, filled with a mix of regret and something else, something softer, almost tender. He took a step toward her, but she instinctively backed away, her breath catching. "Don't," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't try to explain. You've been lying to me this entire time." "I wasn't lying," Luca said, his tone desperate. "I was trying to keep you safe. I never wanted you to know about this, about any of it." "You think that makes it better?" she snapped, her eyes welling with tears. "You've been watching me, controlling my life, and for what? Some debt my father owed? What was it I lie to you, Luca? A job?" Luca's jaw tightened, but his eyes softened as he stepped closer, his movements slow and deliberate. "At first, yes," he admitted, his voice rough. "But you became so much more. You were never just a job to me, Lily. Not for a long time." She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I don't believe you." "You don't have to believe me," Luca said, his voice breaking slightly. "But it's the truth. I've spent every moment of the last 5 years making sure nothing happened to you, watching from the shadows because I knew this day would come. And now that it has, I can't stand the thought of losing you." The raw emotion in his words struck her like a blow. Her anger wavered, replaced by a confusing mix of hurt and longing. "You've been lying to me," she repeated, but her voice was weaker now, wavering. "I know," he said softly. Stepping even closer, he gently cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing away her tears. "And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right, but you have to trust me now. I'll do whatever it takes to protect you, Lily. Not because I owe anyone anything, but because I—" He stopped, the words catching in his throat, but his eyes said what he couldn't. Lily's heart skipped a beat, caught between anger and something deeper, something she wasn't ready to name but couldn't ignore. Lily froze as Luca's hands cradled her face, his warmth seeping through her skin despite the icy grip of fear in her chest. Her breath hitched, and she stared into his dark eyes, eyes that held so much pain, so much longing, that it unsettled her more than anything Vincenzo had said. "Say it," she whispered, barely audible, her voice trembling. Luca's jaw tightened, and for a moment he hesitated, but then he exhaled, his voice low and raw. "I love you, Lily. I have for years. I know I don't deserve you, not after everything, but it's the truth. I've fought it, tried to convince myself it was wrong, but I can't anymore. I love you." The words hung in the air, fragile and exposed. Lily's heart clenched, the weight of his confession crashing down on her. She wanted to push him away, to scream at him for lying to her, for keeping her in the dark. But at the same time, she felt the walls she'd built around herself begin to crack. Her lips parted, but before she could respond, Vincenzo's sharp laugh cut through the tension. "Well, isn't this touching?" he drawled, stepping forward. "A star-crossed romance, born from lies and betrayal. You know, Luca, I almost feel sorry for you. Almost." Luca's hands dropped from Lily's face, his body shifting instinctively to shield her from Vincenzo. "This doesn't concern you anymore," he said, his voice cold and lethal. "Oh, it concerns me," Vincenzo replied, his smirk vanishing. "And you've complicated things, Luca. The other families want her. They think she's the key to breaking you and, by extension, us. Do you really think your little love story can survive that?" Lily's stomach turned. "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice sharp despite the fear curling inside her. "It means," Vincenzo said with a shrug, "you're a liability to everyone now. The families will come for you, Lily. And Luca, they'll make him watch." Luca stepped closer to Vincenzo, his voice low and dangerous. "Then they'll die trying." The tension snapped like a live wire as Vincenzo's men shifted, their hands hovering near their weapons. Lily's heart pounded, and for the first time she realized this wasn't just about her safety, it was about Luca's survival too. And maybe, just maybe, their survival together. The air was thick with tension, each moment stretching unbearably as Lily stood frozen between two worlds, the one she thought she knew and the dark, dangerous one she had been dragged into. Vincenzo's smirk didn't waver as he gestured for his men to step back, their hands still hovering near their weapons. "You always were the stubborn one, Luca," Vincenzo said coolly, "but you're playing a dangerous game, one that will only end in blood." Luca didn't flinch. "I don't care about your warnings. If anyone comes for her, I'll take them out myself. She's under my protection, and I don't give a damn what the families think." Vincenzo chuckled darkly, shaking his head. "You're a fool, boy. But I'll give you one last chance. Hand her over, and this all goes away. The families will forget your little rebellion, and you can go back to your shadowy little life." Lily's heart pounded. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Hand her over? Like she was some pawn in their twisted game? She looked at Luca, her voice barely steady. "You're not seriously considering this, are you?" Luca's jaw tightened, his dark eyes meeting hers. "Never," he said firmly. "I'm not letting them touch you." "Then you've sealed your fate," Vincenzo said with a sigh. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to something almost sympathetic. "You're going to war, Luca, and wars leave scars. Think carefully about whether you can protect her from what's coming." With that, he turned, motioning for his men to follow him back to the SUVs. "You've got until dawn to decide, Luca. After that, the families will act, and I won't be able to stop them." Lily watched in stunned silence as the black SUVs pulled away, leaving the garage eerily quiet. She turned to Luca, her hands trembling. "What just happened? What does he mean by war?" Luca ran a hand through his hair, pacing like a caged animal. It means they'll come for you, for us, and if we're not ready, they'll kill us both. Lily swallowed hard. So what do we do? Luca stopped pacing and looked at her, determination burning in his eyes. We fight. Luca's words hung in the air, heavy and final. Lily felt her stomach drop, her pulse hammering in her ears. Fight? She wasn't a fighter. She was a student, an ordinary woman who wanted nothing to do with this world of shadows and blood. And yet here she was, standing at the edge of something she couldn't fully grasp. You can't be serious, she said, her voice trembling. You're talking about going up against an entire mafia. That's suicide. Luca stepped closer, his expression resolute but not unkind. I've been fighting them my whole life, Lily. This isn't new to me, but now it's different. Because now it's about you. She shook her head, her panic rising. You're risking everything. For what? For me? I don't understand, Luca. I don't know how we ended up here. Luca hesitated, his hand twitching like he wanted to reach for her, but wasn't sure if he should. Because you matter to me, Lily, more than anything else. I know this is insane, and I know you didn't ask for any of this, but you're not alone in it. Not anymore. Her breath hitched, and for a moment she let herself see the man beneath the stoic exterior. The man who had been watching over her for years, not out of obligation, but out of something deeper, something raw and unspoken. Okay, she whispered, more to herself than to him. What do we do? Luca's shoulders relaxed slightly, as if her agreement lifted a fraction of the weight he carried. We need to move. They'll expect us to stay here, to try to run or hide. But I have people I trust. We'll regroup, make a plan. People you trust, she echoed, her brow furrowing. You mean more criminals? He gave her a wry smile, though his eyes remained serious. Not all criminals, but yes, some of them. This is a war, Lily. We don't win it by playing nice. Before she could respond, a sharp crack echoed through the garage, the unmistakable sound of a gunshot. Luca lunged forward, pulling her to the ground as the air filled with chaos once again. They're here, he growled, his voice taut with urgency. Stay low, and stay with me. The chaos was deafening as bullets ricocheted off concrete, and the metallic tang of gunfire filled the air. Lily clung to Luca, her heart racing as he shielded her with his body. Stay down, he whispered, fiercely, his eyes scanning the shadows for movement. The attackers moved closer, their footsteps echoing in the garage. Lily could see their silhouettes now. 3 men, weapons drawn, advancing with precision. Luca's jaw tightened, and he reached for his gun, preparing to fire. But then the unexpected happened. A sleek black SUV roared into the garage, its headlights flooding the space, the doors flung open, and men dressed in sharp suits poured out, weapons trained on the attackers. Luca, one of them shouted. Luca's expression shifted, a flicker of relief breaking through his tension. Stay here, he told Lily before stepping out from cover. The attackers, realizing they were outnumbered, hesitated. The man leading the new group, a tall figure with salt and pepper hair, stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. You have 2 choices, walk away, or we'll finish this here. The attackers exchanged glances, then slowly lowered their weapons. Without a word, they retreated into the shadows, disappearing as quickly as they'd come. Luca turned to the older man, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. Took you long enough, Nico. The man clapped Luca on the shoulder. You've always been reckless, but this? You're lucky I got here in time. Lily emerged cautiously, her knees still trembling. Nico's eyes landed on her, and his expression softened. This must be her, Luca nodded. This is Lily. Nico gave her a small smile. You're safe now. We'll make sure no one comes after you again. Lily looked at Luca, her chest tightening with a mix of fear and gratitude. Is it really over? Luca stepped closer, taking her hands in his. It's over, he said, his voice steady. They won't touch you again, I promise. For the first time, Lily allowed herself to believe him. As they left the garage together, hand in hand, she realized that despite the chaos, despite the lies and the danger, Luca had given her something she hadn't expected. Hope. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she could breathe again.